on to the next item is the pollution reduction plan, the public comment period and responses. Mrs. Fountain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get to Mrs. Fountain, I just wanted to touch on a few things. Number one, we have received public comment as required by DEP. We've also provided responses by the engineer as required by DEP. Through the public comment period, we realized that most of the public comments focused on the Roberts Ridge meadow specifically. There was a few questions on several of the other proposed areas of meadow. However, the one that stood out the most was the Roberts Ridge proposed meadow. Jeff, if you could put up that slide. So in response to those comments, we have through the engineers and the calculations, just to sort of orient you with the slide that's on the TV now, Frost Lane, is to the north, Lower Dolington Road is to the east, Goodnoe Elementary is the most prominent feature to the west of the proposed Roberts Ridge Park. Through the public comment responses that we had and the amount of people that were sort of in favor of maintaining a manicured lawn in the area south of the playground at Roberts Ridge Park, we were able to reconfigure the meadow to incorporate a larger area swath of lawn and manicured lawn in response to those comments. So the areas that are shown in red on that plan are where the proposed meadow would eventually be, which encompass the basin, sort of along the hedgerow adjacent to the basin, along with the western property line abutting Goodnoe Elementary School. We also were able to incorporate a little bit of the meadow area up along Frost Lane and down over Dolington to the north of the playground. One of the public comments was also included was from residents of Newtown Walk that were concerned about having the meadow sort of adjacent to their homes, to the rear of their homes. That area will now be maintained as lawn, and the meadow shifted further north. So in essence, we're able to accommodate, hopefully, residents' concerns and accomplish both goals at the same time. So I've asked Michelle to come to the meeting tonight. The appropriate motion by the board would be to accept the public comments as well as the engineer's responses for submission to DEP. So I don't know if the board has any questions for Michelle directly.
Yes, hi Michelle. Thanks for coming here. One of the things I would like to focus on, I think, is something that I think was not addressed in the response, has to do with what the representatives of the Chamonix Creek Watershed Association notified us about, was a risk of increasing the spread of invasive vegetation when creating meadows. Can you give any plans on how you might reduce this risk, and other, either do you or maybe Mr. Lewis has experience with projects based on a similar plan that you can cite?
And we're going to be maintaining these meadows with our public works crews. I mean, this is more of an administrative function than an engineering function once they're established. What you can't allow happen with meadows is just to let them establish and do nothing. There's a certain maintenance procedure that's required, typically mowing every once in a while, once, twice, 3 times a year, depending on if an invasive species do occur. Treating those invasive species that are more aggressive and eradicating them before they take hold will be our priority, and it will be Mr. Schiavone and I's responsibility to maintain these meadows as meadows, and so they're not overgrown thickets.
I know that you have a degree in landscape engineering. Do you have any experience in creating such a meadow that you can talk about?
Yes, actually my degrees in landscape architecture. I'm a registered landscape architect with the state of Pennsylvania. I've had several meadows, not only in basins, but within dry upland areas that were done the same way and established and were successful. So I have confidence that these meadows will end up in that same fashion.
And I'll just add that that was one of the reasons why we chose a meadow conversion, grass area to meadows. Besides it being a pretty easy, less costly way for the township to address the sediment reduction requirement, is that your manager is a landscape architect. Who better to be watching over these 61 acres that are going to be converted?
Well, I think it's great that you were able to reconfigure Roberts Ridge Park because, there's a lot of people who were adamant about using that space. So I hope it is used in the future. I also wanted to say that going forward, how the public can be more involved in this. I know from reading what the EPA has said, an active and involved community is crucial to the success of a stormwater management program. The public can provide valuable input and assistance to a regulated small MS4's municipal stormwater management program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was talking to several people about involving homeowners associations, and my homeowners association in Country Bend has a lot of open space, and I think it's part of a watershed plan, I'm not sure, that we wanted to convert to a meadow as well. And I know from previous conversations that anything that homeowners can do on their own to improve their wastewater management, stormwater management, can add to the 10% reduction. Is that correct understanding?
It could, but as long as the homeowners association would maintain it and there would be some kind of agreement with the township that would always stay as a meadow or always stay as a converted basin.
Right. Well, as a HOA liaison, I would like to see the township more closely work with like the Environmental Advisory Board, which has expressed to me their interest in having homeowners associations involved in the future, not only with their own management issues with meadows, but also to help advise the township. And I know we had several residents come here from the Neshaminy watershed, Neshaminy Creek Watershed Association, willing to help out and so on. And I was wondering if the board could work with the Environmental Advisory Board to have a meeting with HOA representatives to start discussing this. Is that something I know that has been done in the past?
It absolutely has been done in the past. There's one of the minimum control measures is public education and public participation. And in the past, the engineer has met with the EAC and the HOAs and tried to involve them to see how best to get them involved. And I'm sure Leanne is going to take care of that as well.
And if I may, John, I can join you in that. I was on the EAC when Michelle came to talk to us. So I'm aware that the EAC is willing and
absolutely
able to meet and help with this. So.
Okay, well, that's good, and that's all the comments that I have. Thank you.
I did have one question. I saw it in your comments or responses. There would be a walkway. There were a couple of areas that residents were concerned about having a walkway cut through
in the Roberts Ridge area?
Yeah, in the Roberts Ridge area.
Yeah, we can, I mean, once it's established, we can take a look and see where people, if there's enough room, number one, now that it's reconfigured, we can accommodate. All it takes is a pass with a mower, so that's fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Linda, okay, Michelle, it's all yours.
All mine, all done? Oh, I thought I was done, right? Unless you had questions. Oh.
Were you going to address anything in
No.
regards to any of the questions that were presented to you.
I believe in your package you have all of our answers to all of the questions, and I will say that there was quite a few questions. We do this for about 15 different municipalities, and if you guessed over one, how many other questions we got back from those 15 municipalities, you'd be incorrect. So this by far beats any other municipality with the residents' comments on the plan.
Well, that's a compliment to the residents.
To the residents of Newtown Township, yes, and how invested they are in this program.
So we pay you $1,000 an hour just to show up.
1,000, oh, please don't start that rumor. I won't talk about Dave
Yeah.
and.
No, he's another story. Well, no, thank you very much. Unless anyone has questions, how about anybody from the public with this concern? Yes, sir. You have to come up to the podium.
Nick Yadachicco, that's IADICICCO. And my concern has to do with the specificity of the township's plans for the meadow conversion. Besides Roberts Ridge, I think there are a few other plans for meadows. And I'm just wondering who's going to monitor these areas to determine whether or not invasives are appearing, and what's the action that's going to be taken once the invasives are uncovered.
And that will be my responsibility.
So you're going to visit each of these
Yes.
areas?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, that's part of the monitoring, and if we have to, we'll pull the engineers for more advanced situations, but it'll be mostly up to me and our public works director.
And can I ask, what's the planned frequency of the visits to these?
3-4 times a year.
And
So
that's-
for the first 3 or 4 years, and then after they're established and become sort of their own environment, those inspections can decrease.
Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that invasives only have a certain time period to appear. I mean, they could appear at any time. So how long term? How do we know that we're not?
If it's found that there's invasives during inspections, we'll treat it.
Okay. I'm just not confident that the plan is sound enough to have frequent enough inspections and identification of these invasives that we're going to be able to stay on top of them.
Thanks, we'll take that under consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
You said, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank Michelle Fountain for her input and help with all of this. Like I said before, the appropriate motion by the board would be to accept the public comment and responses by CKS to be submitted to DEP.
Okay, do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any questions, further questions from the board? Any more from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?